Hey, Shalom Bakiam, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to say call hello Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakah Kodash. Send double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Send much peace, love, and salutation to Yakim pushing the word of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, sincerity and truth. This is the brother of the Ariala, and this is just a continuation. We're going over the tribes. We started out with how do we get over here. We went through all those scriptures of 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, and everything like that. What I'm going to do is just start off with the first tribe that's, Reuben. I'm a Reubenite, and so I'm going to start off with this. Once again, I want to tell you, Akiam, there's so much information. As I'm going through watching all the old videos of the apostles and brothers that have done sit downs on this, it's just so vast. So I'm going to do my best to condense it down. What you're going to see is me taking bits and pieces of the apostles, the bishops, other brothers to add to this lesson, and Lord willing, it's edifying, and I just wanted to try to make it more concise as possible. But there's going to be, the information is out there. If you want to go more in depth, I'm going to have basically what you need to look at, all right? I'm going to play this clip talking about the Native American Indians, because we're going to be talking about Reuben and Gad. And this brother, History of Yahweh went over this, and he did a beautiful job. I'm just going to take pieces of things that he talked about for this lesson, so it's not too exhaustive. But he goes in the fifth part, he goes over this, which we're going to talk about as we go through this lesson. I just want to open up with this.
Well, this here's my new bronc buster. This is my daughter, Catherine. Shalom Aleichem, Jackson 2 Bears.
Mr. Ballou, what's the use of saying Shalom Aleichem to me? I'm a full Sioux Indian. I'm not one of the chosen people.
All right, go ahead being stubborn if you want
No,
it.
I ain't stubborn.
Oh, not much you ain't. According to an ex-congressman of these United States I heard give a lecture at the Chautauqua this winter, Indians is the lost tribe of Israel, but he won't admit it.
Just ain't true.
He was an ex-congressman of these United States, I tell you.
Oh, Papa, maybe he was mistaken.
Oh, no, he was not. Jackson just got a mean, stubborn streak in him is all. I brought Mr. Bernstein, the telegraph operator, out here from town last month, and he stood right where you're standing now, and he talked Hebrew at Jackson for 10 minutes by my watch, and Jackson pretended he didn't understand a word. Now, I call that stubborn.
Well, I didn't understand a word.
You see what I mean? Now, you get that trunk down out of there. I'll get the sergeant.
Boom. So as you can see, man, even in these old westerns, anybody that grew up, so those of you that probably had dads, I grew up, in the 80s, 90s. My dad always watched westerns, and you would catch these parts of different western movies dealing with the so-called Native Americans, and they would have these parts telling you that the so-called Native Americans were of the tribes of Israel. Now, this brother is going to go over the lost 10 tribes of Israel found. We'll come back to this. But what I want to do is go to the prophecies. Now, when you go here in Genesis, the 49th chapter, first verse, it says, "And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days." So he's going to his sons, 12 tribes, and says what's going to befall in the last day. Now, don't get it twisted. When it talks about the last days here, the last days started during the time of Yahushua. So when you look at prophecy, we're looking at the time of Yahushua when he came on the scene and he was crucified. Officially, the last days began. And we're just completing these prophecies, hence, so forth and so on. So there's a breadth of time for us to understand what was going to befall the Israelites. Literally 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and plus that was going to befall the Israelites to give us keys and clues to who the Israelites are, what the Most High wants, what He's determined for the nations, and everything like that. Okay, verse 2 says, "Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob." Now, during the ancient times, this is what a father would do. You see maybe a movie or a TV series where the guy is old and he's coming down and he has his will and he's telling the kids what they gonna get, and then certain movies inside of the will, there's like basically prophecies of what he's saying over his children, and it cause tumults or whatever. But as it is given to the father, the children receive it. So through the spirit power of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, Jacob is pulling his sons, and he's saying, "Listen," he says, "and hearken unto Israel your father, Reuben, Rabawan." That's how you say it in the Hebrew, right? Thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. So when you look at Reuben, let's go to the word Reuben, just so we can go over it, right? So right, Reuben, right? Reuben. It says, "Behold a son." Why does it say "Behold a son"? Now, when it talks about this, oh man, this thing is broke. Blue Letter is getting so much better. They actually pulled up the precept right there. Look at that. That's dope as hell. Right to the side, and you usually have to scroll down and pull it to the side. But when you go to Genesis 29, it talks about Leah. Now, Leah was the other daughter. Really, when Jacob wanted to get married to Rachel, but it was like, hey, you got to marry my daughter Leah too, right? And so in verse 30 it says, "And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years." Right? Y'all can go over and read the story of how he came to Laban, and Laban talked about that. That's not what we're here for. Let's get to the point of him name being Reuben. It says, "And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, Surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now, therefore, my husband will love me." Because why? You had your firstborn son with her. So now Leah's like, yeah, he gotta love me, right? So she had Reuben. Behold, there's a son, and that was his name. All right. So now when you come back and read this, it talks about how Reuben is the beginning of my strength. Obviously, we see that firstborn son, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Now, Reuben was a part of the warrior class of the nation of Israel. Very, very, very regal, upright, in mindset of class is what we can see. Eventually, we'll get to how we relate that to the Seminoles, but I want to read a couple of scriptures that talk about Reuben so we can get a little bit of mindset, right? So let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Let's go down to the 18th verse, and where it talks about Reuben. It says, "The sons of Reuben and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, of valiant men able to bear buckler and sword, to shoot with bow and skill in war, were 40,703 score, and went out to war." Now, when you think about why we call the Gadites the so-called Native Americans, why we call the Reubenites, all right, the Seminole Indians, when you look at the series of wars that progressed over the time after they were brought over to the Americas, you can see that skill. And the cavalry, the so-called white man had a very hard time with the tribes of Reuben and Gad and Manasseh. They still have a problem with Manasseh, so to speak, right? And so this is a part of the prophecy that shows you who and how they would be in the last days. We're going to get to more of that history. What I want to talk about is I want to continue to just focus on Reuben. Reuben, we tell you that it's Seminole Indians, when you go back to Genesis 49 and the 4th verse, it says, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up into thy father's bed, and defoulest thou it. He went up on my couch. Now, when you go to the top of there in First Chronicles, it talks about that. All right. So what happened was Reuben went off, defiled the father's bed, and that's why, because he's the firstborn, even though he's the firstborn, he doesn't have the firstborn rights. All right. So 1 Corinthians 5:1 says, now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, and the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. For Judah prevailed above his brethren, and of him came the chief ruler. That chief ruler is talking about Yahushua. So we know that Judah has the rights, kind of like as the first of the head tribe, and Yahushua sprang out of Judah. That's that chief ruler, right? But the birthright was given. But the birthright was Joseph. So we understand when we look at this that there was a changing. Most High was in, and really it's to show the Most High's power over everything. Okay, but the point I really want to focus on is talking about him as unstable as water, because if you understand Reuben, the Reuben spirit is all over the place. It can't be tamed. It can't be controlled. He's unstable as water. When you look up this word Seminole, you go to the etymology of the word Seminole. It says member of a native people formerly of Florida, allied with the Creeks. They was all in with the Creeks, Muskogee, right? It says wild. The Seminole Indians were wild, untamed, runaway. That's what the word goes back to. Wild, untamed, runaway. That's kind of the spirit of Reuben. All right. And that's how they were whenever basically the so-called white man tried to come and control the Seminole Indians and even the Gadites. All right. But they were wild, untamed, runaway. They fled down into swamps of Florida, and they couldn't be tamed. Now, I'm not going to go into it in as depth as Apostle Rakah would go, but I'm just going to go over a little bit more history, showing you how, Reuben one is, man. They wasn't meant to be controlled, man. It wasn't meant to be someone trying to stop them, all right? Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 5, it says, and he was king in Jeshurun, talking about Moses, when the heads of the people and the tribes of Israel were gathered together. Let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. So basically, the northern kingdom, the northern tribes were going to come over to the Americas and increase. And as you study the history of the Seminoles and the Gadites, the so-called Native Americans, they spread all across Canada, North America. They built, and basically, whenever the conquistadors came over here, they saw that it was just a land of just opulence and just beauty, and gold was just on the ground. It was just like, wow. And it was like, nigga, we want that. I want to take all of that. You know what I'm saying? I want to control all of this stuff. All right. But, of course, as Esau and as the prophecies spoke, hey, they came and destroyed. Now, when you go here and you read Genesis, the 49th chapter, we read about Reuben. We talked about how his spirit was. I'm going to get some clips to show y'all how Reuben had that dignified spirit. They wasn't going to lay down for nobody. They wasn't going to just give in. The excellency of their dignity, man. They wasn't just going to give their lands over. They were going to fight. And we saw that out of the Seminole Indians. When you go on and you study the Seminole Indian Wars and everything that went down, you get that. But I want to combine this with what we read about with Gad. Right? When we read about with Gad. So when you go down to the 19th verse, it says, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. So when you read this, What is the troop that overcame Gad? Right? It was the U.S. cavalry. All right, they came and they overtook Gad. Now, when you look up that word Gawad, it means troop. Right, and so that's exactly what happened, man. That's exactly what happened. I'm gonna play a clip here so y'all can see what happened to the tribe of Gad when they came over. We went over the reasons why the tribes came over, but how we identify those tribes, it is indicating markers. All right, so I'm gonna play this.
American cavalry, all right? North American cavalry.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Had a troop actually took them over in the last days, which was the birth of this nation, the North American cavalry, all right? And you got the documents over there.
This devil Andrew Jackson. He signed what was called the Indian Removal Act of 1830. It says here the 21st Congress, first session, and this was in Ohio. It said Memorial of the Ladies of Steubenville, Ohio. It says against the forcible removal of the Indians without the limits of the United States, February 15, 1830. It says, ordered that it lie one day upon the table. The Honorable, the Senate, the House of Representatives of the United States. And this is what it says here.
So it was the United States. It wasn't no wayward Edomite that got together with a lynch mob to take down Gad. It was this country that took down Gad. So you can't call this society a great society. You know, having President's Day and all that, and then you got a statue down in Jacksonville, Florida, of this guy Andrew Jackson, which he was a president. So the so-called greatness of this man's society, we shouldn't celebrate that because we were brought down by his greatness. He became great through us being brought down, and that not just us. Not just Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, but Gad and the rest of the tribes. Go ahead.
This is from an article called People and Events, Indian
Because the Gadites had a lot that these people wanted to take. When you go back in Deuteronomy, and you go to the 33rd chapter, and then you scroll down, and you read the prophecies, Deuteronomy 33 and 20 says, and of Gad he said, blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. He shall dwell as a lion and teareth the arm with the crown of his head. Now, when you understand, Gad had all the land that was in Canada, North America, and everything like that. And Gad dwelled as a lion. I read the scripture that showed you they were part of the warrior class, man. You wasn't just going to just run up on Gad. And that's why Esau, they had to create technology to take down Gad. They had to create the pistol, the Colt revolver, and even had to go all the way up into the Gatling gun. Because what happened with Gad started to figure out Esau's weapons and started to use their weapons against them. So you wasn't just going to run up on Gad. You know, they were blessed, man. All right, and tear up the arm with the crown of the head. When you read this part, that's why they wore those headdresses, that crown of the head, those headdresses. Those big headdresses. Hold on. Let me go to the apostles. Sit down. Now you go to part 11. I think this might be the part where they talk about it. Let me see.
Lands, they had the North American cavalry, which was that great troop that destroyed them. All right, go ahead.
It says, but he shall overcome at the last.
So don't you have Gadites? They got casinos all over the place, man. Now they can lend money. They had this one Gadite on a TV commercial talking about if you need money, you can come to me and I'll lend you some money. So now, but the real way they're going to take over is on a physical level, just like Judah, going back to Micah 5 and 7, because Micah 5 and 7 on down is talking about all the tribes.
And we're going to get to the point to where we're going to have the feet on the neck of our enemies, man. You best believe Gad is going to be a part of that.
We're going to have to get physical on you, man. All right, go ahead.
Genesis 49 and 19 again. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last.
Now Deuteronomy 33 and 20.
Deuteronomy 33 verse 20. And of Gad he said, Blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. He dwelleth as a lion.
Right, it said, Blessed be he that enlarges Gad. How is Gad enlarged? Do you look at the land of America? That's a big stretch of land. That's 2,000 miles by 3,000 miles.
Boom. So we talked about the part. Let me skip ahead to the next part. Hold on.
Because Canada is just about as big as America, or maybe bigger. Go ahead.
It says, and of Gad he said, Blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. He dwelleth as a lion, and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. And he provided the first part for himself.
Tear off the arm, meaning now, the blood brother ritual.
There's a part in here where they show the headdress. That's really what I wanted, because I had one of the headdress, but I was like, it's already in the video, so why do I need to put it? It should be coming up, man. I can't find it. It should be coming.
True. Which they actually did. And the crown of the head was that headdress that they wore.
Let's go.
The beautiful headdress that they wore. All right? Now, I got a clip right here of Gad. Let me go to that.
Hey, if y'all ain't went back and watched these videos, man, look, bro. That's on you. I'm just taking bits and pieces of these series, and I'm literally going through all of these different series and just taking clips to make this video. It's taking me a long time, so you can go back and watch the whole thing. I'm just giving you the highlights of all these videos.
All right, go to that, brother.
And this is back when the apostles were more raw, back when the wokeism wasn't at its height. So you're not going to find the apostles speak the way that they speak, back, this is just 10, 15 years ago. But you can't even talk like this no more. It's a wonder that these videos are not taken down.
Final list.
You see the headdress? That's that crown on the head. Okay.
Jerry Cleveland. And that guy.
Yeah.
His leg just was very impressive.
And you get a good look. You see the fringes on him. Right, the faces as lion. Look at their faces. The faces as lions, right?
Now, when you read stories, there's stories of when the different cavalry would come into the swamps of the Seminole Indians, Creeks, or even the Cherokee, or when they would go into the woods, and basically their guerrilla warfare would be set out. And they would have all this face paint on and everything like that. That's why they call them Redskins. But when the moon was set in the sky, basically when you get inside them trees, you can't see the moon like that. So it's just a little glimmer of light here and there. And they would be, and these guys, you have these guys that had all this ammunition, had all these guns. They would flee out of fear of Gad and Reuben out in these swamps, out in these forests, because they couldn't see what was going on. They was afraid, man. So you want to talk about Geronimo and all these other great leaders of Gad, man. They had Esau in fear. That's why they was making all these BS pacts. And basically trying to set Jake up, trying to set Jake up, bro. We will see it, man. All right. 1 Corinthians 12 and 8. And of the Gadites, there separated themselves unto David, unto the hold of the wilderness, men of might and men of war, fit for battle, that could handle shield and buckler, whose faces were like the faces of lions, and were as swift as the roes upon the mountains, man. And this is why Esau set out to. They were like, man, we got to get rid of these guys, man. We're never going to come into anything with these people here. We can't do it. All right. So, I want to go through those scriptures and talk about prophetically why we see Gad and Reuben, but archaeology wise, there's tons and tons and tons of information of us seeing that these are the people of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Before I do that, let me play this. Let me play a clip of some of the issues that Reuben and Gad went through. Alright, so play this.
Tribes refers to the major Native American nations that originally lived in America's Deep South. These were the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee Creek, and Seminole tribes. In the early days of European colonization, tensions between the Europeans and the merciless Indians, as they were called, were high. The Native Americans understandably fought hard to keep their land, which the invaders didn't particularly like, as they felt they were entitled to it. Later, President George Washington deemed American natives as biologically equal, but with an inferior society. He encouraged the process of civilization that Thomas Jefferson continued in his tenure. What followed was some tribes assimilating somewhat into European culture, with cross-cultural marriages even taking place in some instances. Although, more often than not, this was forced assimilation and erasure of their natural culture in order to avoid more deaths at the hands of European Americans.
So you had Esau set up all these fake treaties that they reneged on. We know the history, man. But it was a part of us going down. It was a part of our people being taken down by Esau and receiving of those curses. Because when they came over, bro, our people were getting destroyed. When you go to Deuteronomy, let me see if I got it. I know I had it. Deuteronomy 28 talks about us. Deuteronomy 28:19, cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send the cursing, vexation, and rebuke, and all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and thou shalt perish quickly because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. And that's what's happening, man. And so whenever these Edomites was coming over into the land, they were completely taking advantage of our people, man. Right? The Lord shall make pestilence cleave unto thee. And that's why these Edomites was coming, giving Gad and Reuben smallpox and all types of diseases, man. Until he have consumed thee from off the land, whether thou goest to possess it. So we had that land, and we was getting killed with diseases and all types of crap, man. All types of just wickedness, man. All right? Verse 60, moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt which thou wast afraid of, and thou shalt cleave unto thee. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. And one of the biggest sicknesses was that smallpox that they brought. Okay, and that was a part of making these deals and pacts and mingling with these people, which the Lord told us not to do.
The 5 tribes we've already mentioned were the ones to do this, converting to Christianity and developing centralized governments, English literacy, written constitutions, and even owned their own African-American slaves like the white colonizers. This uneasy peace was maintained until the white Americans kicked things up a notch. It wasn't sufficient.
That was one of the other parts of Reuben wanting to be on a high level, was they actually had Jake in captivity, man. When I say Jake, I mean you so-called Negroes. Now, after time, there was refuges that the Seminoles actually established with the Mexicans, to where you had Jake fleeing into Oklahoma, Texas, and getting away from slavery, which led to the Texas Revolution with Stephen F. Austin. You know, you hear all those stories of Jim Bowie and all them. And they were basically slave runners. And Jake was dealing with Issachar and was dealing with Reuben. and getting free. You know, so that's also a part of the history. It's a vast history.
That they had invaded another culture's territory and brought diseases that ran rampant. They now decided they deserved all the land for themselves as their settlements grew and people became greedier. Even the 5 tribes who had shown a willingness to integrate with the European Americans became victims of their desire to own everything. In 1829,
Right, and so because Jake was listening to Esau, thinking that they could manipulate and work with Esau, but it was out of the mind of trying to get what they wanted, and it was backfiring. And then Jake would have to go back into that warlike spirit and fight.
Andrew Jackson became president. He had been a strong proponent for removal of Native Americans for at least a decade already, and now that he was in power, he was determined to accomplish this goal. And he didn't waste any time. On May 28, 1830, less than a year into his presidency, Jackson signed what was called the Indian Removal Act. The act allowed Jackson to negotiate with the tribes for their removal to land the European Americans had decided was more appropriate for them, west of the Mississippi River. In other words, the settlers wanted to expand and weren't going to let the native citizens of America get in their way. The act removed any claim the Native Americans had to their own land, and
Now, if you're listening to this and you're actually trying to understand, you would have already stopped this video and went and Googled Indian Removal Act. I shouldn't have to do it for you. Grow up.
supported relocation funded by the US government. And although the law stated that President couldn't move the tribes without a mutually agreed treaty, Jackson was not about to let that stand in his way should negotiations fail. Jackson continued to somewhat work with tribal leaders to negotiate their removal west, but history does not look favorably upon his treatment of Native American tribes and his aggressive pursuit of their removal. The first treaty was signed that first year with the Choctaw tribe after years of land loss and hardships for them. Their feelings can be summed up by their leader, George W. Harkins, who wrote, "We as Choctaws rather chose to suffer and be free than live under the degrading influence of laws which our voice could not be heard in their formation." The Choctaw tribe were the first victims of the Trail of Tears. Between 1821 and 1833, all but approximately 5,000 to 6,000 Choctaw had been moved to the west. During their removal, they endured freezing temperatures, flooded rivers, and extreme food shortages. One group was completely lost in the Lake Providence swamps, while those who completed the journey experienced heavy losses of their family and friends along the way. All in all, it's predicted anywhere between 2,500 and 6,000 Choctaw tribe members died on the Trail of Tears from disease and mishaps along the way, prompting one chief to refer to the experience as a trail of tears and death. Those who remained endured no better, victim to frequent harassment, intimidation, destruction of their properties, and, in some cases, murdered by the European Americans who resented their presence. Although the 7 chiefs of the Seminole tribe had signed a treaty agreeing to move west, upon returning home from scouting the land, most immediately renounced the statement, claiming they had been forced into signing. Given the general attitude of Jackson and his government, this is most likely true. What followed was nearly...
You see what it's saying about the Seminoles? Seminoles wasn't playing with these people, and that goes back to the prophecy that we read about in Genesis, the 49th chapter. The excellency of dignity.
7 years of fighting, starting in 1835 and ending in 1842. It was the longest and most costly of all the Indian conflicts.
Because it was hard to go down there in Florida and fight. All right, especially the people that come from a warlike nature.
Say we feel too sorry for the U.S. government there. As the Seminole resisted relocation, Florida and the U.S. government sent troops and equipment to help the army force the tribe over the river. They were successful, and it's predicted they forcibly relocated somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 Seminole tribespeople. The number of Seminole who died in the war is uncertain, but it's likely between 700 to 1,000 members of the tribe. Around 500 Seminoles did escape to the Everglades, whom the government, after much fighting, left in peace, realizing they would not be able to subjugate them easily.
See, they left them in peace, realizing... And now when you go out there to Florida, man, they have their own little area, man. Now, of course, you're going to see a casino there or whatever, but when you go deeper into the land, and y'all brothers can, and I'll give you a reference. Let's see if I have it here. Boom. When you go into this series, it's a long series, but when you get into the deeper parts of this series. Let me see. Let's see. Apostles is going in, man. It's not pulling up. There's a series in here where you'll see Apostle Rakah, and they're going through this is like over a decade ago. This is why this is becoming so exhausting. But I'll find it, Lord willing, on one of these other lessons. I'll post it. But yeah, they couldn't fuck with the Seminoles, man. And that goes back to the prophecies. And along with Gad, they committed genocide on the people, whatever. But there's portions of it where the Most High made sure there's a remnant that's going to be preserved to get that lick back. And we're in that time.
Because of the terrain and climate of the region, they remain the only federally recognized tribe which never signed a peace treaty with the U.S. The Muskogee Creek tribe had been working with the U.S. government and Andrew Jackson before.
Now, when you study the Seminoles, you're going to read about the Muskogee, you're going to read about the Creek Indians. All right? All the same people.
For his inauguration as president, although the Muskogee signed a treaty with the U.S. government, the Treaty of Cassetta in 1832, whites moved into their territory before everything was settled, and land speculators deliberately defrauded and stole from the lands of the Muskogee Creeks. By 1830.
So anybody that's met Apostle Rakah, he speaks Creek, he speaks Miccosukee. That's where he's from. He's from Florida. So he's full Seminole Indian, all right, from his dad's side. He's Seminole. All right, and anybody that's been around him, if you're around him, because he's not going to just speak his native tongue around you if he don't know you. But any brothers that have put work in this truth and you've gained and earned some type of trust through the Spirit, Apostle Rakah will speak his native language around you, and if you have the blessing to be around and sit at his feet, he'll go heavy into the history of not just the Seminole Indians, and he'll go into the whole native Aztec, Mayan history of the North America's Canadian history. Anybody that's been around him, you know what I mean? So yeah, this is a deep history, and this is a very high level people that go back to the scriptures. Now, the next part, I'm going to play a little bit more of this, but what I want to go into next is a little bit more of the archaeological, historical information that shows you how these native peoples of America have Hebraic, Jewish connection. And if you don't want to receive it, that's on you. Leave. I don't give a shit.
1946, there was an uprising from the tribe's people protecting their land from the fraudulent and invasive practices of the whites. The uprising ended abruptly when soldiers began rounding up Creek people and forcibly extracting them to the Indian territory of Fort Gibson. Over the next year, more than 15,000 Muskogee Creeks were forced from their homes with nothing more than the clothes they were wearing. With the army in tow, they made their way along the 750-mile route, now known as the Creek Trail of Tears. It's estimated over 3,500 men, women, and...
Now, this is how there's so many Seminole Indians in Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, all these areas. And like even my dad's side of the family is from all of these migrations and mixing of people. Okay, so they came over, you had men mixing with the slaves and everything like that. And this is how you have Reuben mixed all across the Deep South. All right. Anyway, I want to move on from this, and I want to go to this next clip of the apostles, and they're going in on Gad, and this relates to Reuben as well. Brothers, they got to put the pieces together, and they're going to go through some history here, okay? Now, this is a movie that they brought up, and I want to touch on this movie. And play it. Now check. This is Native Americans, and look and pay attention to the language that they speaking and everything that they doing.
War is let out. You're in the painting. You killed our own people. War will keep the good bad guy out of the underground.
The rest will have to die.
Where are the bats? Tell me, Uncle, where are they?
The flying animals are Yahweh's messengers.
Now you keep.
I
Now
can't
you
let
keep
you kill
saying.
everyone.
He keeps saying
You
Yahweh.
do the right thing.
Basically, he's trying to say Yahweh, but they're not saying it the right way. But they're very close. So that proves he sort of made all this stuff up, man. He's the one that makes movies in Hollywood. So he knows that the Gadites are the Hebrew Israelites, because in that movie in that scene you just saw, he kept saying Yahweh, which is Yahweh. All right. Now we had went through this.
Now he's gonna go through this book and go through several points, and I'm gonna get to it, but I'm gonna cut from here, and I'm gonna go back. Oh man, so many clips, so much information, man. I'm gonna go back to this right here, where this brother here, Srip Yaquab, goes through the lost 10 tribes of Israel found. Check this.
Okay, this is called The Lost 10 Tribes of Israel Found. By Stephen M. Collins.
Now, if you try to go online and get this, they're going to make it hard on you for free. Maybe y'all brothers can do it. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to be like, oh, I found it for free. Good. Post it. Help brothers out. And or you can just order the book. I mean, lots of brothers have this book.
All right. Page 51.
Listen up.
Says, additional evidence of ancient worshippers of the true God in America had been noted on a Decalogue tablet, a stone tablet having an ancient Hebrew inscription of the Ten Commandments.
So this is a Native American thing. You see, it has these inscriptions.
Which was unearthed in Ohio in 1860. Besides having an inscription of the Ten Commandments on it, the tablet includes a depiction of an individual meant to represent Moses, which has been carved in considerable detail on the front of the tablet. Okay.
Now, you say, oh, you know, they got influenced by some people that came. No, bro, why would they have the Hebrew? Why would they have the Assyrian Hebrew? It's because that's where they came from. These are people of the indigenous native tribes that came over here, or Israelites.
And page 84. Actually, no, that was basically it on that. I'm gonna go in this. This is called Annals, which Annals means Chronicles of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania in the olden time. Bring a collection of memoirs, anecdote, and incident of the cities and its inhabitants, and of the earliest settlements of the inland part of Pennsylvania from the date of the founders. It intended to preserve the recollections. Right, Philadelphia, published by Elijah Thomas, number 28, S 7th Street, 1857. All right, entered.
I tried to find this and it was a beast. So I'm just going to play this clip and then I'm going to move back to the apostles.
Entered according to the Act of Congress in the years 1857 by Elijah Thomas in the clerk's office of the District Court of the United States in and for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania.
Alright, so now I went online and I found the digitized part of this. But actually finding the part that the brother is going into was a beast. So you brothers can go and look this up on the archive.org. And if you're nerdy enough, you can find the section that he's reading from. I was trying to find the section that he was reading from, and I was just like, you know what? I wanted to make it easy for brothers and have it pulled up and do all that cute shit, but I'm just gonna play this clip.
Alright. These are chronicles from Philadelphia, about the Indians of Philadelphia. And it says, such a scene was like the patriarchal relations in the Bible, and Brickwell makes the remark that many of the observances in his mind seem to show their affinity to the Jews. They had their regular feasts, such as the first corn that is fit to use was made a fruit offering, and when they started on hunting expeditions, the first game that was taken, they skinned whole, observing not to break a bone.
So you seeing how they're keeping all these Hebraic customs, showing you that's where they came from, bro. You don't just magically do that. The only people that do these type of things come from the family of the Hebrews, meaning coming out of Ibar. Now, when you go to Ishmael, you might see them do certain things that are very, because they're Hebrews. When you go to Ammon, when you go to Moab, they will do Hebraic things. Even ancient Edomite shit, they do Hebrew things. But the legacy of the righteousness of the sons of God goes through the nation of Israel. It's passed on and passed down, right? Through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is where that legacy stays the same. Esau goes and mixes with the Hittites, and Ammon and Moab go and mixes with the other Hamitic nations, and they're doing all types of crap. All right? But when you look at the legacy of the sons of God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, this is where you have the preservation of Ibar, the past, the righteous way of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. And you see remnants of that spirit within the people in the native tribes, so-called Native Americans.
And leaving thereon the head, ears, and hoofs, this they cook whole, and everyone partakes, and the rest they entirely burn up. They also observe the law of clean and unclean animals. They never eat catfish, eels, or other fish without scales.
You know, we read about that in Leviticus, man. You see that?
Nor beasts or birds of prey. They would not even eat rabbit.
Ammon don't do that. Moab don't do that. If you go over there to China, I had my stepbro went to China, and he was like, he in the world. He in the world. He was like, man, there was nothing I could eat. He was like, they be eating octopus and this and that. He said, you go to McDonald's, they give you an octopus. What's the sandwich in McDonald's? Big Mac. They give you an octopus Big Mac. They put shrimp on the burger. You know? But when you look at the Native Americans and our people, they were keeping the customs of the Jews, man.
Rabbits when he had killed them. Their women, too, observed with remarkable strictness times of seclusion, and not returned to society till after washing themselves and their whole apparel. That's during the time of the menstrual cycle. Alright, for 7 days.
See, the law of separation. So these are some of the customs that they was keeping. Now, the brother pulls up another book, and I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. When you go here to the 10 Tribes of Israel by Timothy R. Jenkins, right? And you go to the 14th page and you skip down to the bottom of this. It says here, I want you to read with me right here. It was written in large letters in blue ink. Let's go. Never mind. Just kidding. All right, no, right here. It says, in going down Lake Champlain in December of 1832, I was detained by accident, which happened to the steamboat at Lake Ticonderoga, to grow to the kind to Condergo. There, I discovered near a small village Hebrew letters on the rocks. Right? So he's talking about this is in native lands, though. Hebrew letters was on some rocks. 1832, right? At first, I thought they were marks of feet upon the rocks, which Mr. Morse speaks of in his geography. But on reflection, I saw that some were Hebrew sheens. They were large letters, going into the 15th page, from 4 to 5 inches long and beautifully carved. They are engraved in sharp trap rock, a quarter of an inch deep and a quarter of an inch wide in the thickest part, and then in beautifully carved hairlines. I found also Gamal Yad Hath in its oldest form, Wav and Tav. I did not count them, but presume to say that there were more than 100 near the outlet of Lake George. See, more than 100. I found an anchor with 2 flukes. I found but 2 words, Shoguru, for family of the Shuhites. There was an inscription in Pennsylvania on your rocks on the route of the canal. I have heard. Right? Now all these facts render it probable that our Indians are the outcasts of Israel. It is hoped that our ministers in the West will enter into further investigation. So they're finding all these Hebraic artifacts as they come and colonize the North American regions, lending to the mindset that, oh, these people actually descend from the nation of Israel. Now, this book, as you can see, it talks about ancient antiquities. Brothers can go read, and they're going in. Brothers are giving this, and I'm just pointing it out. Now, what the brother does is that he skips to the 81st page, and I want to do that. Go to page 81. Let me read at the top. Okay. And it says here, the reverend gentleman mentioned in the introduction, who had taken so much pains in the year 1764 or 5 to travel far westward to find Indians who had never seen a white man, informed the writer of these memoirs that far from the northwest of Ohio, he attended a party of Indians to a treaty with Indians from the west of the Mississippi. Here he found the people he was in search of. He conversed with their beloved man who he had never before seen, a white man, by the assistance of 3 grades, right? Just want to get to the point. Let me see. 3 grades of interpreters. It says the Indian informed him that one of their most ancient traditions was that a great while ago they had a common father who lived towards the rising of the sun. Right? What's the rising sun? The rising sun in the east. And governed the whole world. That all the white people's heads were under his feet. That he had 12 sons by whom he administered his government. Now, when you read this scripture, there's so many scriptures about there being under the feet of our people, right? So, if you read in Baruch, the 4th chapter, it talks about this, right? It talks about this really in multiple scriptures, but enough for us to know that it's passed down from generation to generation to generation. You know what I'm saying? So let's read it. It says here. It says, Baruch 4:25, my children, suffer patiently the wrath that has come upon you from God. For thine enemy have persecuted thee, but surely thou shalt see his destruction and shalt tread upon his neck. Right? And there's multiple scriptures. That's just one I can pull about us basically prophesying having our feet on the head of our enemies. Right? You know? Like Genesis, the 3rd chapter. Okay? But to move on quickly, I just wanted to point that out. All right? So let's go back. Back here, it says that a great while ago they had a common father who lived towards the rising of the sun and governed the whole world. All white people's heads were under his feet. He had 12 sons by whom he administered his government. We know where they get that 12 sons from. Obviously comes from the scriptures. That his authority was derived from the Great Spirit by virtue of some special gift from him. That the 12 sons behaved very bad and tyrannized over the people, abusing their power to a great degree, so as to offend the Great Spirit exceedingly. And that he, being thus angry with them, suffered the white people to introduce spirituous liquors among them, and made them drunk, and stole the special gift of the great Spirit from them, and by this means usurped the power over them. And ever since the Indians' heads were under the white people's feet. Now, how many scriptures do we read about how the nations have drank down the wine of the wrath of the fornication, or the nations have been drunken, and everything like that? All types of scriptures.